Some of you may have heard of Worldreader over the years. We've been around about 15 years, and it was only last July 2024, that we made a strategic decision to invest in early childhood development and retool our technology, consolidate who we were as an organization, and relaunch a platform called Booksmart, all with the goal of trying to understand and support parents, caregivers at large, reading to their children really right from birth on up. And so we've been on a journey, and we're very grateful for ICEI, for EduEvidence, and what we've learned over this last year as we've strategically narrowed our focus and begun this journey. In 2024, we reached over 440,000 families with our platform called Booksmart, primarily on the continent of Africa, in the countries of Kenya, Ghana, and South Africa, were our major readership. And we, over this last couple of months, have continued to grow in our approach. I would just say, as an organization, we're always digital first, we're mobile first, we're committed to families. That is our first value. We remain curious as an organization. And so going through the certification process is actually been a truly deepening of our work as an organization. And then finally, we really want to be trusted. And I think the whole certification process continues to refine organizations and make them stronger in who they are and what they're delivering as impact to those that their mission identifies. So ICI was our external evaluator. We launched a research study in Kenya, working primarily with non-formal settlements of families in Kibera, and really looked at how do we understand if parents reading to their children at a certain volume and over a certain period of time, they will improve early literacy and build their social emotional skills through that engagement. I think intuitively we know this to be true. The question is, can a platform and access to a platform and the guidance around that further support parents on that journey, particularly across markets. And in this case, we assessed it in Kenya. Very simply, to take a very rich study and simplify it, I would say the one thing Zoom needs to do is figure out how to move the gallery over the slides, right? There's always that. Was really looking at how do we it was a 5.5 month period. What we requested were that families read a variety of books, but really focus on evaluation of 5 of our original books that we have. We have a very rich library of about 2,700 titles across 5 languages. We've spent years curating a very rich children's collection. But for this study, we said we really want certain books to be featured, and we want those so that we can measure whether there's any comprehension, vocabulary understanding, story understanding, recall, and obviously the connection around social emotional learning. So these are the 5 books that were encouraged to be read. We put it that way. We used a tested tool, which many of you are familiar with, IDELA, that comes from Save the Children's original longstanding. And then we conducted a caregiver survey to really understand what parents understood about Booksmart, what they understood about the process of reading to and with their children. And that those insights are feeding into a larger study we're doing in South Africa at this moment, really looking at how do we use digital assets to inform parent engagement and uptake of engagement with their children, and what's the value of digital, and why I think that is so important when we think about EdTech at large, but really about who is our audience. Our audience today that are utilizing EdTech tools are young families, right? They're kids, they're all digital natives, and they're only going to use tech more and more. So the question I often ask my own team is, how do we ensure that we're putting the right, this whole conversation is about evidence, but how do we ensure that we're speaking to young families appropriately when we're competing with so many other tools, digital tools that they're familiar with? How do we ensure that we're building them in a way that they want to use them? Because in order for parents to want to engage with their children, they also need to understand that the user experience and the engagement is meaningful. Um, why this study is important, I think, in the field, but also for us as an organization, is there are, as Natalia shared, tens of thousands of tools out there, right? But in the education sector, and have been in this a long time. One area that we continually, I believe, have underinvested in is the role of families. How do we bring families into the equation from birth forward to support their children's reading? We know of all the constraints that families face. I'm not mitigating that. I just know that parents, as we know, are the largest, or the caregiver are the largest influencers at a very young age. We know that if we double down in that early childhood development time period, children are more likely to be school ready. Um, and that has an effect on the overall school system. And so for us as in our deployment of BookSmart, we really are looking at how do we strengthen that evidence in that those very early years, because if we can do it at scale, that is game changing. While this study occurred in Kenya, very mindful that we operate and have families that read on our platform in over 100 countries. And we are designing BookSmart as a vehicle that is designed for parents, as a tool for them to engage with their children. Um, because at those very young years, it's about a lot of that interaction and how can we use reading, how can we use coaching tips to further engage parents in a more proactive way with their young children. So in short, we received the efficacy award, not efficacy, efficacy, right? Effectiveness award. I'm getting myself confused.
Effectiveness,
Um,
that's right.
yeah, thank you. I was like, wow, what am I saying? Because we demonstrated promise. We needed to do a more rigorous study to have the gold certification. But I think what gave us insight was where we needed to tweak in order to build a stronger engagement approach, to understand how do parents retain their reading over a longer period of time? How do they read more? Those are all behavioral change elements that need to take effect. Um, and one element that we've worked very hard on over this last year is to anchor ourselves at a county level. So we are in partnership in Kenya with Kilifi County, as well as looking at how do we mitigate any barrier to access. So we recently launched an M-Pesa platform and working with them to further promote BookSmart as a value add both as to their customer base, but also reduce barriers because almost everybody has digital banking on their phone in Kenya. And I think as uh, M-Pesa likes to say, right, it's the bank in their pocket. And we'd like to say this is the family library, BookSmart in your pocket, right on the same phone, right on the same application in which you're engaged. So I'll just close. Here on the left are some of our original books. We're leaning into some of our own proprietary content. We have a whole series called Cookie Kitty. We will also be having some television episodes that we'll trial in Kenya around it as well. But I think, we are very mindful that as a mission as a nonprofit, we have no paywalls. We are always free to anyone, and that's due to the generous donations we receive from our philanthropists and funders. And I think that is key because we recognize data remains in some countries very expensive. So any additional subscriptions or barriers we would like to reduce. And then I think we are going to see over time that we are improving early childhood development, um, those pre-literacy and social emotional skills that continue to further enhance that educational learning, and ideally support the education system at large as children enter into more institutionalized learning environments. I encourage you to download Booksmart. It's available for anybody in Kenya. You know, you can find us on M-Pesa as well, but we are on Android. We have native Android iOS app, and we're a PWA. And for those in Ghana, we have long worked in Ghana, so feel free to further promote us and engage us as you see fit. I think that's it.